Good evening and welcome to another episode of Apolitically Incorrect Guyana. My name is Kian Jabour and my co-host Timothy Jonas is with you. And we are now hosting a show in election season, I guess, officially.
No, I'm not sure I've been elevated to co-host. I'm still a guest.
No, you are
technically, I think,
definitely
but,
co-host.
Glad to be back.
Well, how could you not be co-host? The only time one of us are not here is when the other can't be, or one of us can't be. But none, so you are co-host. Everyone, it's official.
Well,
Okay,
things are interesting.
We're gonna change the name at the bottom soon.
Topics have gotten interesting, so I like to come to discuss them.
Well, and I think within the next 3 months we are going to have a lot of fun on this show because there's going to be some interesting perspectives.
Definitely.
And we're starting today hot and heavy. Just before I jump into that, I just want to make it clear because the PPP used it against, it was oddly used against me last year, but there was nothing I could have done because there was an issue. But I'd like to just make it known to the public that I am now officially registered and will be voting in the next election. Yes. So all of the people out there, the PPP, for some weird reason, were using it last election to discredit me somehow, but there was an issue with address or something like that. My passport had expired. And at the time, it was taking forever to get back my passport. And yes, it's still my fault. I do take responsibility. But problem resolved. Passport is official and valid. And now I'm completely registered. So you will see me with... Thank you. You will see me with ink on my finger on September 1st. With that said... elections has been announced. Okay, I have to bring it up. The reason I brought up the fact that I'm registered, other than to clear the air on that, there is another piece of information that I do have a problem with. Do you know that today was the last day to register to be able to vote in the next election?
No, I hadn't heard that. That would be unusual. That's strange, isn't it?
Now, I do want to speak on this, Tim, because if there's one thing that I think the entire country knows, is that if the government wants the entire country to know something and make it very clear, they have the apparatus to do it. They know how to message their little groups to tell everybody and put it up on your newsroom and your DPI and your Chronicle and your NCN and all their little, social media pages to make it very, very clear that everybody should go and register. And there's nothing being hidden. The president, can post something like that.
Again, that's if you want people to be helpful. But for me, I still like to rely on a system that works. And GCOM runs elections.
Yes.
So it's not for the government or the opposition to set timelines and to say this is what we're doing. GCOM is the entity that is responsible to monitor that list, to continuously update it.
Yeah.
And GCOM knows there's going to be an election this year. So just as in other instances, I say I object to the government trying to exercise control and influence over arms that should be independent, like the JRA and that kind of thing. In this case, I gotta say, GCOM should be independent and GCOM should be competent. And knowing that there are elections, we should have had alarms from the beginning of the year and alerts saying, get registered. As part of our continuous process, we will be closing off at this period.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it's been done.
This I think you're missing the conversation. They were. GCOM did do. No. I think you're missing the conversation that I'm having here. GCOM did their part. Okay. GCOM used their tools. GCOM used their avenues to make sure that they put the message out. They put it in the newspapers, they had it on the radio, and etc. My conversation that I'm having is I found it odd that the large political parties, and in this case the government, was not pushing harder to make sure more people got registered. Like it's something that you would think that all the political parties would be pushing, they would be hammering, everybody get out there and register.
Including the opposition.
Include everyone across the board. Okay, but I pinpoint government not because of to pick on them, but the reality is they're in control of in control of the state apparatus. Okay, they have those tools at their disposal to ensure that messages get much further and wider than GCOM alone can. And that's the conversation I found it odd, as I said, that the government was not pushing that more. Like, why would you not want to encourage everyone to quickly get registered? Like, I'm going to be very honest with you. I only saw it today by chance that today was the last day. And I walked into that office on Sheriff Street, and I actually was amazed at how much people were like, I didn't know about this until today either.
Well, again,
and I found that what could be the reason for that?
I reduce it to basic human instincts. I mean, there's so many variables, I don't think you can draw a conclusion. If we agree it's GCOM's responsibility, and I am a PPP member, and I see that list, and I believe that on that list we have an advantage, I'm not going to make a song and dance to tell people come and add to the list.
Good.
And similarly, if I'm PNC and see the list and think I have an advantage, I will stay quiet.
Good.
So
Good.
I don't think that to point to a political party to say, tell all and sundry come and register. Political parties, and we've seen that experience, they're not concerned about national good. They're concerned about staying in power. And I think you got to put the responsibility for the conduct of the elections with GCOM. I think it would be a bit optimistic to ask either government or opposition to hold their hands up.
No, you can't say government or opposition. You got to say PPP or APNU.
Yeah.
The government does have a responsibility to push it, though.
Right.
The government of Guyana.
Right.
Because that's their national duty, right? That is their responsibility. GCOM falls under the government of Guyana, right?
No, GCOM is an independent, autonomous organization.
Agreed, but is budgeted, is allocated money under the government of Guyana.
By
the government
Parliament.
of Guyana is to...
It is allocated money
Right.
by Parliament, which houses both sides.
Right, but for issues of national interest, the government of Guyana must be part of pushing certain information
I
out.
think we got to disagree on that.
But the PPP, I agree with you. It's not the PPP's job to do. But the government of Guyana, what I'm pointing out here is a flaw in the system. I'm showing you that the government, obviously, and this is where the issue arises, has no separation from its political party that's in executive. And the problem that you have there is that these types of things should be naturally happening with or without political influence. So just like GCOM is an autonomous body, NCN and Chronicle and DPI and blah, 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 should not be that politically inclined to only be operating for the best interest of the party and not the best interest of everyone. Because I'm going to be honest.
That we can agree with.
Quickly calling an election. Let's be honest about this whole scenario here. Calling an election this week on Sunday, knowing that the deadline then to vote will be not even 7 days later,
to be registered,
will disenfranchise a lot of people. Because the reality is, most people are going to sit there and wait until what registering for? I'm too busy, I work all day, blah, blah. I ain't taking an hour out or 2 hours out my day during the week to go, and I don't even know when elections is. Elections will have triggered in people, the announcement of elections will have triggered in people, hey, let me go and finish registering, let me go and get a start. Tim, they didn't even give the people 5 working days. I have a problem with that. I think that's too rash. I think that's not being understanding and lenient enough to the average working man to give him the opportunity to schedule into his time, hey, let me go and make sure I'm, back on this. And then again, I couple that with the fact that a lot of people didn't even know that today was the last day to register because it was not publicized enough.
Well, I'll say that throughout the world, governments that are entitled to decide when to have elections and set the timing for the elections and the timing of their announcement for their own benefit. So in Canada, when things look bleak, they held an election. In England, when things look bad, they hold a crash elections. They hold a snap elections because they think that things are good now or things are bad now, and now is the best time to cut losses, or now is a good time to ensure, since I'm in the people's favor, to ensure that I've got another 5 years by calling in elections now when I'm popular. So that's not the national interest. That's a political decision. And I'm sorry, I can't criticize any political party for taking a political decision like that.
I like where this conversation is headed, okay? So political strategy. Good. Now we've called an election on a date that not a lot of people expected, okay? Do you have any comments as to why you think... I'm going to be honest with you too. September 1st is a rough date. You got school starting back. Schools are used. in the electoral
Those
process.
are small issues. They'll have a holiday or they'll postpone school opening or something. That's a small issue. That's administrative.
But I hear you, but again, it could have been the week previous, and then it wouldn't have affected anybody, right? I mean, school starting back also brings back all the teachers back into work, everybody that are part of, certain apparatus. Once September hits, everything kind of kicks back into gear. All your clinics, your hospitals, everybody kind of gets back onto their schedules now that kids are back in school, and then on top of that, it's smack dab in the middle of CPL, which, don't get me wrong, I think might be by itself its own political strategy, because I guess that's when Guyanese are most patriotic, I guess. So nothing wrong with that. But again, just more on the schedule, more things happening. So
I believe that the government perceives the opposition to be in disarray.
Okay.
Very recently, there have been talks between AFC and APNU, which are the two largest opposition parties, about a coalition. Mm-hmm. Nobody seemed too worried about it, but those talks fell apart. It seemed they couldn't get their act together. Even within the two parties, their supporters are criticizing them. Mm-hmm. And it seems to me that one good reason to have an early elections is not to give either of those two parties the time to put their houses in order and line things up, so that they can be ready going into the elections.
Yeah.
So it made sense while they were in a state of disarray to say, we have the elections now, let's move forward. I think another thing was we see an increasing public attention directed to the Mohammed family. Mm-hmm. And perhaps it was thought that by having an early election, they would avoid the possibility that attention would increase. Because the more attention any potential party gets, of course, the worse it is for the incumbent. Mm-hmm. So maybe it was to avoid the attention enjoyed by the Mohammed snowballing into something greater. But I think those are two good reasons, first of all, to call the elections before they needed to, but also to give short notice.
Okay, we are going to talk about the Mohammed situation, because it's been something that has plagued us all, it's been everywhere this week, plagued social media. But before I do that, I'm going to actually speak about something that I think even more people care about. And that is the Adriana Young situation that has now sprung up again. All right. Let me just give up a little precursor so we understand. The government, almost again conveniently or coincidentally coinciding with the another autopsy that's being done in America, has released or has stated basically the final autopsy report from the three pathologists that were here, and put it out on their, the police put it out on their news, social media, and I don't think they did a press conference about it again.
But we did see an interview of the pathologist, and I thought that was...
No, hold on. That's the new one.
The new one, yes.
No, but before I get to that...
Oh, I'm sorry. No. Contradistinction to the first one.
Yes, sorry.
The first one, we're getting information piecemeal.
Good. This is
almost like it was a secret.
It's going to be an interesting conversation, because, again, as soon as basically the government found out and confirmed that there was another fourth pathologist doing an autopsy in America, which happened yesterday or day before, the government put out the final report on the first one that was done at public hospital by the three pathologists. So they put out all their information stating, again, not an interview, not even a what you call it, like a Teams meeting or a Zoom, conference, speaking to the pathologist. Again, just some worded documents stating, basically showing us the parts of the statement, claiming the final statement is out, this is the conclusion. So they put that narrative out, almost in an attempt to counter whatever might come next. But very quickly fast forwarding to the next day, the fourth pathologist, which is this American woman, up in, I think it was somewhere in America, right? Georgia, I think, or wherever. They sent the body of Adriana Young up to do the tests up there. And you saw the interview with that doctor. So the first thing I'd like to comment on is, it's very interesting listening to a professional, somebody that's actually qualified to speak and answer questions about the autopsy that she did.
That should have happened the first go round, definitely. Because without that exposure to the press, that face-to-face where you are asked questions and you answer, you don't have that reassurance. The public is not reassured.
Right.
The opinion that is given needs to be tested. There needs to be some questions so that you get the sense that these people know what they're talking about, they did their job, and they are upfront and open to face you and to answer the questions, to show who they are.
Yes. And so, Tim, we're going to paint a picture here. All right. And I think that's what me stating all of this is, because what we have watched is failures in our institutions. We have watched botched police cases, a botched police dynamic situation that I encountered. And then we watched communication issues. We watched, Tim, I'm going to be very straight. I'm going to be very plain about this. We have watched the government execute plans very efficiently and effectively to get certain things done. It bothers me to the point where I cannot rationalize why this situation with Adriana Young has been allowed to get to the point where it's at, with no communication whatsoever, or at least the communication that's given out has been in such a manner that nobody can gain confidence from it, down to all the way from the time the police arrived on that site. So you have watched, then moving all the way forward to what occurred in front of the hospital on the day of the autopsy, and watching all of these things play out. And Tim, I can be honest with you, I cannot wrap my head around why they would go about doing things like this, knowing how tense society is about this matter. Like, it's almost like they're not trying to calm things down. And that's my problem with this. All right? Because I will be the first to tell you, the politics is using this situation. But the politics is only using this situation because they've been given the avenue to do it. All right? And that's what I think needs to be recognized here. So from day one, let's just quickly, in 2 seconds, run through the sequence of events. It's not going to take long. The little girl went missing. Okay? The police showed up, and with their lackadaisical effort, couple hours pass. They do a lackadaisical search of the hotel. They look at the family and they tell them, we have a video to show that your daughter has jumped in a car and she gone. Complete lie. The family stood up there with their, with their confidence saying that didn't happen. Couple hours pass by. They claim they're searching. They haven't found her. That's when Critic and everybody went to the hotel. The media was there. Everybody claimed they searched. We all saw the videos. They said the girl is not in this hotel by multiple sources, including the police that claim she wasn't there. Now, evening falls. The police look at the parents and say, your daughter not in this hotel, go along home. The people say, will you tell me, you can't tell me my daughter not in this hotel. I know she's here. She was here. This is where I left her. Well, we don't know how to help you, etc. The people, again, get angry because they don't believe what the police are saying. Fast forward through the whole night. Everybody stayed there. Nobody left. Get to the morning now. More people have gathered in an angry mob. And they're demanding to find out where this child is. Only for the police at that moment in the morning, call it 10 o'clock in the morning, right? Sun is back out, bright daylight, looks at everybody and says, okay, we've searched the hotel. Everybody needs to leave now. We're taking control of this situation. Chases everybody out of the hotel. Moments later, after everybody leaves, and it's only the police left there, moments later, for that body to be discovered having floated up and to be claimed to have been floated up in the pool. Now, I'm not going to sit here and debate on who knows factually what happened. I'm just talking to you as we saw it. All right? We can only base on what our eyes have seen. Now, everyone that was there has their own version of what happened, claims they understand that this is a murder, blah, blah, blah. Everybody has their own opinions. And then there's a whole other side now that's stating, no, this wasn't a murder. It wasn't a cover-up. It was just poor police work, if you will. Now, we just leave that situation there. The young lady was found in the pool. They took her out. Again, more suspicion. All of a sudden, the hotel starts to burn down, right? argument is that looters did it, blah, blah, blah. The other side is arguing, no, they burned it to get rid of evidence. Again, police didn't do their job. Fast forward very quickly to the next day, 2 days after, people going crazy, everybody highly upset. It's gone worldwide media. They send the commander to another division. All right, this is not even administratively, not nothing. Send him to another commission. The people kick up a stink again. Okay, never mind. Don't go on administrative leave. They say a couple of the police officers have been taken, have been questioned and sent on leave. No, I just want to make sure everybody understands as well. There has been no press conferences by the police during all of this so far. We're talking about 2, 3, 4 days. Okay, no hearing nothing from the police. All right. Now, the autopsy, becomes its own scenario. The families, everybody gets worried that the police are going to botch this thing. They're already convinced it's a cover-up, and they want to make sure that they know what's going on. So 3 pathologists come in, 3 professional people. Nobody's questioning their professionalism or credentials, qualifications. They come and they do it. Now, at the actual hospital, all hell breaks loose. People were there. Before I even get into that, people were there from 8 o'clock in the morning. All day, those people, that whole mob was there all day in front of the hospital. Yes, there were elements that were behaving bad. Tim, the police could have handled the situation. They could have cordoned off the hospital from all the way up the road. They could have cordoned off the whole road in front there if they realized things were bad, just to calm the situation down.
So what are you getting at? I mean, so far your statement is a criticism of the police, which I agree with.
Right.
But is that where you're landing?
No. We're landing on how we've gotten to the point now where this country is still completely torn without information. Without enough information, and a highly politicized situation that half the country is looking at with their own 2 eyes and stating, no, I saw that girl wasn't in the pool, and then the police giving half-ass efforts, the president coming out and giving a report on a pathologist, on a medical procedure that he's not qualified to do, that he can't answer, that he did not answer any questions on. And then you move now into another dynamic where the government has basically looked at this entire situation now and went, we've done all we can. We wash our hands of this. And half the country sitting down there going, wait a second, there hasn't been any justice. Nothing has occurred here. There has been no accountability had. And this situation is just going to get swept under the rug again. This is just another situation. Too bad this little girl is dead. We don't know how she died or what happened. Leave this be. Because the new pathologist now that did yesterday had their say in this situation, came and answered questions, and again, just by itself, just listening to the interview, has just left the country with more doubt.
No, I don't agree with that.
Okay, go ahead.
If you listen to the interview of the pathologist, the second group of people who did the forensic examination, they said they saw no marks of violence. They saw no marks of anybody interfering with the body. They checked very fragile bones around the throat that invariably get broken if there's any strangulation or any holding or any hostility. They were intact. So they saw no marks of violence and no problems. They stopped short of saying that the child drowned. And they gave a reason for stopping short of saying that. You see, there's no doubt that young Adriana died because water went into her lungs. So she died by drowning.
Yes.
But to say someone died by drowning suggests an accident. If you put cause of death drowning, that's an accident.
Right.
If you put cause of death murder, that's something else. So they say they stopped short of treating it as drowning as an accident. And the reason that she gave, she specifically said it, the reason she gave is because an account of the surrounding circumstances was given to her. Now, what account of surrounding circumstances was given to her? It could only be what you just described, that there was a proliferation of people who should not have been present, a compromised potential crime scene, nobody knowing the answers, and the possibility that the body was not in the pool overnight, as half the country was arguing the body was not in the pool. She cannot pronounce on any of that because all she did was open that body and look at it. So because of those surrounding circumstances that she cannot comment on, she stopped short of saying it was accidental because she can't.
Yes.
But she does say no marks of violence, no other forms of interference, bones in the throat secure, unbroken, undamaged, no signs of tampering. Where do you go from there?
Well,
I agree you go back to square one. I agree you go back to saying the police did not do their job because they did not ensure the integrity of the potential crime scene. They did not stop people from tramping all over the place. They did not look after the body carefully when they found it to make sure that they put it in a body bag, secured so that any kind of DNA was intact. They did a horrendously bad job. But insofar as you're saying questions were not answered, I think a lot of questions were answered.
Okay, but bear in mind, again, I watched the interview as well. The reality is she did say that there are ways that this young lady could have died or could have, foul play could have happened without any signs of it.
No.
Right? So again, that still does now with all the people.
It means we're no further forward.
That's exactly
and this is why I said 2 weeks ago. Because now we've got all the fanciness. We've got people from the Caribbean come down, experts.
Yes.
We've taken the body to the States with more experts. With all of that fanciness, all that brouhaha.
Good.
Nothing has moved forward, and we are at the stage where there will never be a full stop on this.
Yes.
And what
that's
it takes me back to is the total breakdown in the systems. No minister or president should be talking on behalf of any police or any medical examiners.
Yep.
The police need to do their job. They need to be independent and autonomous, and they need to be professional.
Yes.
They were not independent and autonomous. They were not professional. They didn't do their job. And we had ministers and government folk talking on their behalf and on behalf of the pathologists.
Good.
That was unacceptable, and that is why we don't trust our institutions in Guyana.
Yes.
The system, the law requires that where someone dies other than from natural causes, there is a coroner's inquest.
Yeah.
A magistrate in the district is used to have a hearing, a trial, where the magistrate can call anybody who is there, ask questions, and come to a conclusion as to whether this thing needs to be prosecuted or not. And that is where you put a full stop on it. The reason there's no full stop on this is that we keep ignoring our systems.
Good.
Systems can work if you make them work. If you ignore the system, and the reason we've ignored systems in Guyana is because of corruption and political favor.
Good.
The reason that we allow our systems to go is because we like to wriggle out of the way of the systems. Because if somebody gets shot by the policeman, no coroner's inquest. Somebody gets shot by a minister or a senior party man, no coroner's inquest. So there's no accountability. We do not like accountability in this country. We like our friends and our family to control the institutions so that nothing works. But it also means we then are not accountable. We operate above the law, as we have seen happening in the newspapers all the time.
Yet you hit the nail on the head here. And I think that's what the unrest and the situation is occurring because of, Tim. We're in a situation now where the process has not been followed. Whatever has occurred has been clearly done in an inept manner, has clearly done in a way that, again, has so many holes in it that people have no confidence in what the police, in what the president, in what the doctors have said. Okay, and now we're in a position here where you're asking society, you're asking everyone out there that has witnessed year after year after year a historical collective of people being mistreated, investigations going botched, people getting away with literal murder, right? And everyone's sitting down there saying enough is enough. We are now victims in our own society. We have sat here and watched on television, on our phones, on social media, a case that has so many questions that we can't get answers to. We've seen this happen so much in our history. How do people not boil over? How does the situation not bubble into what it is? Because if you look at anyone in their face right now, nobody can say, this, I'm telling you for a fact, this wasn't a murder. Or I'm telling you for a fact, this was an accident. Nobody can do that.
You know, it's interesting. There will always
how do you expect people to react?
There will always be people who disagree with a finding. So you go to court, you get a result, you disagree with the finding. But at least if the system is followed, and if the system is clear and transparent, there is a finality that you've reached a conclusion. And the confidence in the system stems from knowing inevitably that system will be followed.
Yeah.
We don't have that security. We don't have that comfort that the system will be followed, and that is why there's no trust in the institutions.
Okay, we're understanding here that, I'm sorry, Tim, I'm going to be very completely honest with this dynamic tonight. This situation with Adriana Young, Tim, is going to be probably one of the most highly politicized situations in this coming election.
It already is.
It already is.
Let me ask you this, and let me ask your view in public, because they got a lot of people that listen to you. Who do you think has changed their vote? The whole country is very sympathetic to Adriana and her family, right? You got to be a brute not to be sympathetic to what that family went through. How many voters you think have changed or will change their support for one party or the other because of what took place?
It's a fantastic question, and I think, and I would tell you my honest
to reflect on themselves, ask themselves.
Yeah, I like this question a lot, because I'll tell you what my takeaway from this entire thing was, unfortunately, politically, is that, Tim, the younger generation, I saw such a shift now from the younger generation, from your 40 and under to your 40 and up, that have had these like completely conflicting concepts as to what took place here, and to the point where you have this older generation that's trying to convince the younger generation that everything was done and enough was done for us to leave this situation dead now, ignore, move on. And the younger generation sitting there going, that's not how we work. You are not going to show me something. I'm not going to sit down here and watch something with my two eyes that I still don't have answers to and expect me to just let this go. It's not how social media works. It's not how our younger generation works. We don't accept that you have accepted that this little girl died by accident or maybe died by murder, but you're ready to move on with your life.
I agree with you.
We don't have that passion. That's a part of the older generation that has died because they've realized that they're powerless, and they're sitting down there going, oh gosh, this is just another story. Move on. Let me talk about something else. And the younger generation is saying, no, I am going to stand up and fight for this. And this is, you asked me just now, who has changed their vote here? And I know there's a lot of young voters out there, Tim. A lot of young voters out there that don't have this blind loyalty to one or the next, that have sat there and went, I feel like murder has been covered up here, and whether I can prove it or not, I am not accepting that this situation is just going to be swept under the rug. And they've watched...
I'm sorry, Kian.
Go
First
ahead.
of all, every generation, as they get older and they realize the failings of their own generation, turn in hope to the younger generation. Mm-hmm. Now, I agree with the underlying thrust of what you're saying, that with the advent of social media, the availability of information, I do see in the younger generation a greater aptitude, a greater willingness to take in information and to draw conclusions. But part of this problem with social media is because there are so many soapboxes, there are so many media houses that are giving their own spin, that it is easy to take information that you want to believe is true. And you didn't answer my question. You said there are a lot of young people that aren't happy. My question was, how many people will change their vote? And I don't see any. Because you are taking in information on social media that you already want to believe. Because half of the country is listening to the media houses that are saying, this can't possibly be right, we want justice. And the other half of the country is listening to the media houses that say, nothing sinister happened here. So each side is listening to what they want to believe, and nobody is changing their mind. And certainly, nobody has said, yesterday I was supporting Party A, but because of what has happened, I am now going to be supporting Party B. I have not heard a single person say that.
So I hear you, and I hear your experience and understanding of it. But Tim, in reality, when you have the younger generation that's on social media, that's monitoring information, taking in information by the droves in comparison to the over 40s, they're hearing both sides. Not to mention, they themselves have witnessed what they witnessed themselves on their phone, whether accurate or not. They are already convinced that something nefarious is afoot. Something is wrong here. Now, when you sit down here and you watch the president at the last time he was questioned about this, standing up boldly and saying, I've done all I said I was going to do. I'm not dealing with this matter anymore, pretty much. The reality is, people are feeling like victims here. People are feeling like they've been gaslit. People are sitting down here saying, but you haven't answered the questions that we have yet. And again, you're right by your comments stating who is switching votes. I definitely don't think anybody's who is entrenched PPP or entrenched APNU are going to change their votes. But what I'm telling you is those fence sitters, the ones that actually have all the power, okay? Because the 200,000 PPP voters and the 200,000 APNU voters, they cancel each other out. All the power is down the middle. We know our biggest voting bloc is the young people. So these independent-minded young people are all of a sudden sitting here now saying, well, I don't know how comfortable I feel with a government that in my mind is clearly covering up murder for some reason or the next, because they could have easily answered so many of these questions if they did this properly, but they have chosen not to do it. And here's the kicker, continue to choose not to do it by getting defensive. Because hold on, this is a key point for me that I'm going to actually bring up later on in the show here, is how they have now, how the PPP has now politicized this matter by, first of all, they started off by the president giving a medical report, which politicizes it immediately because now he's putting his opinion in it. But more important than that, what they've done now, Tim, is anybody online, and you might not see this because you're not online as much as we are, but anybody online now that states, I still haven't gotten questions, I want justice for Adriana, is now being met with horrific, nasty attacks by PPP supporters online. And Tim, if you're asking me right now, if those people out there are changing their votes, what I can tell you is the PPP is successfully doing a job of disenfranchising and disillusioning everybody that might have considered voting for them that are caught up in this situation by now attacking them so nastily and viciously that those people are sitting there saying, listen, partner, especially young people, partner, what I have seen now is you guys politicize this thing. I haven't got my answers, and y'all intend on giving it to me. You just want to attack me? I done with y'all. That's the response.
And that actually is the answer that I was hoping for. Because when I say who changed their votes as a result of this, the fact is that there are people who are not allied to either party, not aligned to either party. Mm-hmm. And they are looking, and they are torn two ways because they're confronted with election fraud on one side, and they're confronted with corruption on the other side. And the more that they're recognizing that corruption leads to incompetence and the oppression of the powerless, I think the more that they are leaning to say neither side works. And as you said, and I want to challenge the public to think about it, if indeed the numbers of entrenched PPP cancel out the numbers of entrenched PNC, PPP, if they cancel each other out, then those folk who are not aligned have all the power. And I agree with what Kian is saying. You know, traditionally we have a political culture here where we cuss down the other side. It's actually Guyana culture. We cuss down people who don't agree with us. But one characteristic that I have noticed in the young generation is that they are much more polite. They are more careful in their method of communication and in how they express themselves. So they don't attack you and they don't confront you. They are much more guarded in their criticism. And from their point of view, what happens is that your overt hostility, if you are attacking someone and you are cussing them down, it sounds so crass and vulgar that it offends them. And I wanted to ask you about that because you're right. I do see that there is a large body, a large cohort of PPP supporters and trolls who come out and land on you and cuss you down. And there is a large silent viewership that is watching that. And I'm wondering if that isn't suicide, if that isn't harming yourself, if those folk who are clearly trying to run a PPP line and are openly and with hostility cussing you down, calling you all kinds of names and making all kinds of accusations against you, if they're not really alienating the very people, those middle, moderate, liberal people that they should be trying to entice, if they're not really alienating them and therefore doing more harm than good to their own cause.
Yes.
I wonder about that.
No, all the time. So this is such an interesting conversation, Tim, because why this is such an important, Tim, to the point where they are so, first of all, I think I need to mention this first. Tim, I'm telling you right now, factually, and this is not a secret. Okay, you can ask anybody that's in the know. Again, I know I'm privileged to certain information. Tim, the PPP holds, rightfully so. It's how it's political strategy. They hold meetings, all right, with their little groups all over the country, and they do social media training, meaning they have now trained their people to ensure that they attack, and you've heard the vice president say it all the time. He says it every other press conference. We have to fight back against anybody that's against the PPP. Any narrative that you're trying to push to make us look bad, fight them down. Okay, you hear it all the time. He says it all the time. It's not a secret. So they have been, trained. They have been focused on ensuring they attack to the point, Tim, where they attack each other. They just watch a message from a fake account that they don't even know is one of their comrades' fake account that makes a comment and that they have misinterpreted, and now they're fighting each other. Okay, until somebody writes, hey, this is me in some background group. But nonetheless, this is what's key for me, Tim. I have noticed this unreal trend that, as you just questioned, I question all the time. As somebody that walks down the middle, is not a PPP or a PNC, all right? The reality is, I have now sat down and I listened to all of the vice president's press conferences. I watched how he attacks Mohammed, called him man all kind of nasty name, slag buckter, went after the whole country of Barbados the other day for no reason. Talks about, just you watch the names that they've made up online for people coming from his press conferences. You watch the people he has around him. Tim, you've watched the PPP, and I go back to this because I know it triggered a lot of Guyanese. You watch the PPP say nothing, condemn nothing about last year when Guyana Daily News sent hundreds of people to the Mohammeds at the wee hours of the morning claiming that he giving away money, and had those people stand up there in the rain, okay, suffering in hopes to get some money. And you watch the government say nothing about this because big banner across Guyana Daily News support PPP. Okay, vote PPP 2025. And I'm sitting there going, if you are not condemning this, if you are not stopping this from your supporters, it means you are encouraging it. Okay, and I've watched, Tim, you know this as much as I do. We've been doing this for years now. They come online here and they attack you. Nasty. They cuss you about your mother, left, right, and center. And you sit down here and you are talking and I am talking, they're viciously attacking me and you, right? Because we're saying something they don't like here. And then you're watching they go after Aubrey Norton and nastily go after him. Then, like the dirtiest things you can say about people. I got lash you in your head. Sadly enough, we're watching society degrade to that more and more.
But my question, Kian,
but they're attacking everyone is what I'm getting at.
My question,
Nigel Hughes, Mohammeds, you name them.
My question is whether it serves the purpose, whether it achieves the result. Because to me, the only possible intention from this is to accomplish a narrative on social media, online, that this is the truth and this is what people must believe. And anybody who believes something else, clearly something's wrong with their head. But if they're doing that by personal attacks, as we are seeing, and instead of discussing a subject,
conveniently our life is not working
people,
well right now, but go on.
if that's what they're doing, then there has to be some kind of knockback. And I really do think that the
Robbie, sorry Tim, I got pause. Robbie, are we not look at my face on this thing? No wonder people got a lot of whatlessness to say.
I think they timed that deliberately.
Yeah, 100%. The live not meaning what? Your Instagram is not hearing us either? Instagram, if anybody could just make a comment that you're hearing us, that would help because well, we're not gonna say bad things, but reasons, but we are still on YouTube. So I guess we can. But why isn't the internet affecting YouTube?
Interestingly enough, we only got 15 minutes, and the next segue we were going, and I think you were going there. Talk about how the attacks that we're complaining about, that we're seeing generally, have now been focused on the Mohammeds.
Yes.
And again, I am asking the question, does this help the PPP? Because first of all, when you're attacking them and cutting them down in a way that you're not talking about their policies, you're not talking about what they're bringing to the table, you're not trying to address their criticisms in a way that's collegiate and reasonable, that the reasonable people want a conversation about. You're not doing any of that. But what you're doing is you're attacking them through the GRA, you're attacking them through the police. The picture today of the young Mohammed in handcuffs, totally uncalled for. But what it does is it gives them sympathy in the public, and it keeps them in the public limelight.
Yeah.
So doesn't it backfire? I don't see the rationale for this PPP approach, showing very clearly that they control the institutions of the state, the police, the GRA, and all of that, because of the timing of what's going on in terms of the attacks against these people. But then also doing it so publicly that they remain in the spotlight. Why is this happening?
Yeah, but Tim, you're right. And right now their focus is on the Mohammeds. I guess for some reason, some penny has dropped somewhere along the line that he may be the biggest threat to their votes. So you could understand the directed attack that the whole team is now focused on saying as much nasty and spreading as much rumors and lies and attacking as much as possible. But Tim, they do it all across the board. That's my point. When you say that, the Mohammeds is just one person that they're going after. They go after anyone and everyone now. And the question is a wonderful question that you're asking of whether they believe that this is winning them votes, again, from the middle ground that has all the power. Okay? So we're sitting here now, hearing this little echo chamber of the same people in the PPP going around and around and around and attacking everybody. Just go on to any of them live in Guyana, Daily News, blah, blah, blah. Go on to any of them pages now. And they don't even know who to attack anymore on a daily basis. It's like a machine gun that's spinning in circles. They just shooting everybody. It don't matter. Once you don't look like a PPP, we're going after you. And I'm going to say this. It's reached a point now where I think that, Tim, everyone is recognizing that, as you just said, it's not just about the social media like conversation and rumors and whatever they're doing and slander, but they're now using, as you said, the institutions to go after people. And this is what, Tim, this is where it gets super interesting, right? Because all you are doing now, and I'm going to bring up the next conversation, is the Lamborghini. Okay, the whole conversation, because Mohammed has made a statement that Irfan is the president of Guyana is the one that assisted him. You are now personally highlighting that there is no autonomy. You are using and politicizing the institutions to go after people. And again, you brought up just before the show the Paul Slow situation not too long ago.
Yes.
There was two others we had that showed that the government is not is using the institutions.
But there are examples all over. And I want to make the point, because the focus now is on the PPP government doing it. But between 2015 and 2020, the PNC government did it with equal vigor and enthusiasm, abusing their control of the institutions.
I hear you. But that's not a conversation, Tim. I don't want to talk about what happened in the past.
I'm sorry.
It don't matter.
It has got to be the conversation because both sides are equally bad.
I agreed with you, but they're not in power. I'm not talking about somebody not in power. Tim, nobody ain't putting them back in power, partner.
Really?
Who putting them back in power? Tim, they're going to get their votes. They're going to get their couple seats that they always get. I think it's like, 27 seats, no matter what.
You keep arguing that. And I want to point out to you that at the lowest ebb, after 5 years of mismanagement under the Granger government, the PPP only won, if you count the votes for the small parties, by about 7,000 votes.
Good.
That is at the lowest PNC ebb.
So now your conversation is, do I vote for two identical parties?
Say they're out. You can't say they're out in the cold if the margin is 7,000 votes.
Yeah, but we're also not taking into consideration now that the incumbent has shown that they're equally corrupt or equally criminal.
So now you're eroding that 7,000 votes.
Eroding it. No. I'm building on the 7,000. Why would I be eroding it? Because more
They
people are going to
won.
become disillusioned.
They won by 7,000 votes. You're saying having won at their height under just after a bad Granger administration, they have now shown themselves to continue to be corrupt.
Good.
Therefore, even those people who voted for them may now be leaving if they are in that small minority of liberal.
Right. Sorry, I thought you meant the votes in the middle were almost 7,000.
You are saying
that
there are two parties that remain viable contenders for the throne.
Yes, absolutely. There's no question.
So you can't dismiss them. You can't be dismissive.
But Tim, hold on. I think we also need to be very careful here, because you're implying that people that votes that traditionally or ever in history vote PPP stronghold voters have jumped to APNU or vice versa.
Never.
Exactly. So what we're looking at now is the people that don't like APNU and don't trust them anymore, that have always been traditional voters, will either vote third party or stay home. And exactly the opposite, the PPP voters, stronghold voters that have voted PPP their whole life and are not happy anymore,
exactly the same,
are either going to stay home or vote third party. Nobody's voting for the other side.
Good. Nobody crosses
over.
Perfect. And therefore, it needs to be said that group of independents who are saying, okay, I'm not happy about how you're managing the police force. I'm not happy about how you're weaponizing the institutions. I can never go back and support the people that try to rig an election.
Good.
That growing middle ground of people that includes the young people that you're talking about, that take a holistic view and want to see the facts for themselves and draw their own conclusions and reject the propaganda.
Okay.
There's a lot of power in that group.
Yeah, all the power.
And I wonder if that is not the reason that the heavy-handedness of the government now is being directed at the institution that they see as the threat against, first of all, the AFC was the focus of their attention. Now Mohammed's is the focus of their attention. I haven't seen them attacking Norton.
No, they give up on that. Hold on, I do want to say something super interesting about this, because I made a comment about it on Facebook the other day, and it went crazy. Listen to this. I wrote down on Facebook, I made a status that said, I find it odd that the PPP supporters, the level-headed, comfortable, and that's who I was referring to, that the traditional PPP supporters are sitting here watching from 2020 to now the PPP attack anybody in APNU that they are riggers and they are untrustworthy and incompetent and downright bad people. Attack them viciously and say that these people should never be trusted, don't have them anywhere near government. But now all of a sudden are celebrating all over their news agencies and social media pages and all over the place. All of a sudden, look, all of these APNU people are coming over to us. And I sit in there going, but you just tell us how bad these people are. You just tell us they're riggers and we can't trust them. And now you're happy to bring them into your party?
And those same people were just cussing them out as well.
Yes, but my point is, now this is for the level-headed, logical Guyanese, PPP supporters in particular. How do you now trust your party to not become the rigging party?
Because at the end of the day, the policies don't matter. What matters is the party, the ethnic loyalty. And if we can entice some of those people from the other side to come over to us, wonderful, because that may give us the majority in parliament, and that's what it's all about. And the entire purpose of both parties at this stage is to speak softly and speak gently and see if they can woo some of those people on the other side or some of those people sitting on the fence to come lull them to come and vote for us so that maybe we can get that majority. That is the cycle you see every 5 years. And that's what's going on. But it has nothing to do with their policy. It has nothing to do with a real relaxation of racist points of view and racist policies that prefer the people that look like you. What it has to do with is trying to entice those middle people so that we can get 51%. And we see it every time.
Yeah, but this going in the completely opposite direction now, right? And I don't think they've picked up on that, because anybody that is unbiased and is sitting here going, you created a whole slogan called One Guyana. You preach unity and this country got come together. You claim that you running around all over the globe telling people you're trying to bring Guyanese together. Yet anybody that stands up and has a different opinion from you, you viciously, nastily attack and tell them that there's dog and they're the worst people in the world and all kind of nastiness. Tim, I'm sorry. You are contradicting yourself in front of everyone that has a brain. So when you sit down there and think you're winning votes by attacking everybody, clearly you're, at some point, the penny got it. Well, we can find out in elections time, I guess. What do you want me to tell you?
Yep.
Well, we ain't got a lot more till elections. But nonetheless, Tim, we didn't even talk about the lamb. We can do it for 2 seconds because I know what's happening. Okay, I'll give you 2 headlines here. All right. The first one states that Azzuddin Mohammed claims that Irfan Ali assisted him to clear his Lamborghini and get his tax concessions. The second headline, almost immediately after, is Irfan Ali says, "Show me the proof that you gave me the correct invoice." I quote verbatim, "Show me the proof that you gave me the correct invoice." So the headline admits that he was involved. He has stated that you and I had a conversation about this. Okay? This is a newsroom headline, by the way, just so if anybody thinks that I'm trying to manipulate information. I'm sorry, our internet is not up, but maybe just this one place get cut off. But if we're still on YouTube, it's not making sense. YouTube is the internet. How are we on YouTube and not? Anyways, with that said, Tim.
What should have been said, and what
please.
I understand he did say subsequently, is that he had nothing to do with it. Mm-hmm. Now, that's what he should have said with the investigation of this dead child. Mm-hmm. That's what he should have said with the GRA. That's what he should have said with the charges. That's what he should have said with the litigation. He has nothing to do with it because that's not the government's job. Those are institutions that are managing their processes themselves, or should be. But it does beg the question. It's a remarkable coincidence that a car that was brought into the country 4 years ago under a new PPP government. Mm-hmm. So when the government changed, suddenly this enormously expensive car comes into the country. Nobody asks any questions then. Drives around happily for 4 years, and then when he goes political, blam. Suddenly, it's the focus of attention. That's too much of a coincidence. Mm-hmm. There is government control of the institutions that should be autonomous. Mm-hmm. The next thing is that no one is asking the question, who is the customs officer who signed off on this thing? Mm-hmm. Because you do not, as a customs officer, blindly rely on the declaration or the invoice made by the importer.
Yes.
Any fool can go on the internet, can go on social media, Google Lamborghini and see what the prices are.
Yeah.
So if you're accepting a price, a declared value at 1/10 of what Google tells you is the real value, then the person who should be investigated is the customs officer that signed off on it and the person who is his superior who co-signed and approved it.
Yeah.
We haven't heard a whisper about that. That's what I would like to hear about.
Good.
Now, Kian, I think we got to go into that at some length next week, but we are out of time.
Yes. Yes,
and I'm sorry to be the host. You need
no, absolutely. Here, you know what's crazy about this? That was one of our highest viewerships ever. Just so you know, and all of a sudden this thing got.
What can I tell you?
Oh, jeez, I love a good
somebody
conspiracy.
Said it's God. I think somebody said God. God is saying it for the show.
All right. With that said, guys, this one is ready to leave, guys. On that note, Robbie, I think we can cut off there. We will be back here next week to continue this discussion.
Yeah, the religious aspect just got me nervous.
Yeah.